Okay. Uh, I'm not sure which one to rename. I guess, oof. I'm trying to not create
I
confusion.
guess we're on the same account, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, okay, so you're sure what to rename, I guess. Currently
Okay,
host.
hold on.
Okay, so let me, I think I'm the co-host. So should I just log in as me personally and not Mumia? That makes more sense, correct? Since you're going to be Mumia, the campaigns page. Let me, okay, great. Let me come off. Just let me know when that live stream link is uh ready to be sent.
I just emailed it out like just right now. So it's gonna be in your
Okay, thank you. Okay. Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Hope you're all doing okay. We're gonna get 1 second. Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Hope you're both
Welcome.
okay. Okay, so our tech person just stepped away for a minute. But if folks want to at least turn on their cameras in the meantime and see how their sound is, or the sound is, definitely feel free. But I'll let him do the final judgment when he returns. Thank you, Steph. 1 second again. I'm just multitasking. Okay, great. Thank you, Nicholas. Loving the background stuff, feeling that. Yeah, I think I think you guys, yeah, I do the blur all the time, Nick, so that's all good. Looking good. I'm trying to see it on YouTube how it looks outside of Zoom as people are gonna be on YouTube. So it's looking strong to me. Maybe open up the mics to see how we're sounding. So
Mic
we
check, mic check, mic check.
Mic check, mic check.
could you be a little louder for me, Nicholas?
Mic check, mic check.
Okay, that can work. Okay, cool. Uh, so tag is on, and Besan, please forgive me for messing your name up. Let me know. And Safia.
How's my mic? Check, check,
It's
check. How's
fine
mine?
if you kind of keep your body straight and not turn, it sounds better like before the first time.
You said it sounded better the first time?
Yeah, it's not bad now. It's just I felt like I got a
All
different
right.
tune on that first look.
How is this?
Oh yeah, that's stronger. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's much better. Try to keep it at that level. Um,
Peace, peace, comrades.
peace, peace. Okay, so good you're here. Anyone wants to go next? We just did Steph and Nicholas. I don't know if when Santiago's back, if he's gonna want to have that's our tech
Yeah,
person.
I'm back. I'm back.
Okay. You
Sorry
want to
about
do the rest for me or you want me to
Yeah,
continue?
yeah, sure. So maybe Sheena, if you can test your mic, if you haven't already, that'd be great. And then Tag, if you could test your camera, that'd be awesome.
on it.
Hi, everyone.
Cool. All right. I can hear you, Sheena, and I can see you, Tag. So y'all are good to go. Um, is that everyone, or is there anyone who hasn't checked their mic and camera yet?
Uh,
I haven't. This is Sophia. Hi. Testing my mic now, and suddenly, in the worst possible timing, something is wrong with my video, so I'm trying to figure that out. But
No worries.
how's my audio sound?
Audio sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
the sun is left.
Yeah, can everybody hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
My mic works. I'm just getting my video situated.
Okay,
It's
cool.
2 minutes.
And then if you've already done your checks, you can turn your video off.
Okay, appreciate that update, comrade. And peace, peace. This is Tag. I'm wondering if I could just do a quick pronunciation check on y'all's names. Please let me know if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. So, Hadika, Sophia, Basan, Steph, Nicholas. Are those all accurate? Should I shift pronunciation? Appreciate
It's
that.
Great job.
it's Bisan.
Oh, okay. Bisan.
Yeah,
Respect. Appreciate that.
thank you. Can everybody see me too? That looks.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bisan, we can see you, but your mic sounds a little bit fuzzy. Are you using
Fuzzy?
like an external mic or something?
It's like the Mac, like the mic installed with the MacBook. I'm actually not that. Like I don't really know. Is it still really fuzzy?
On my end, at least. Is anyone else kind of hearing fuzziness?
Yes, same
Nah,
here.
I hear it. It's like a
Really?
yeah, it's like a distortion. Like you're too. Try maybe pulling a little bit further from the mic. Maybe it's distorting because you're close.
Like this?
Pull it
Yeah,
a
or
little bit
check
further
to
away.
see if there's anything close to the mic that might be
Like
distorting
this?
it.
Should I? Okay, I'm just gonna leave and re-enter.
Or
Yeah, that's fine.
okay,
Or okay.
try using a different input for your mic. Like if you're using like a clip on, use the built-in mic. If you're using the built-in mic, use your phone. Like try a different thing for your audio. You can, if you're using like an iPhone or if you're using a Mac, you can go to sound and change the source of the sound.
Can you guys hear me now?
But here, keep going, keep going.
Now the issue is
Much
I
better,
think
much better. You sound much better now.
Yeah.
oh, so it switched to my phone and I'm holding my phone. So
Much better, much better. Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
How about this one? It works the same way or no?
Sounds
Yeah,
clear.
that works too. I think
Sounds
it's a little
clear too.
quieter, that second one.
So
Oh, we lost you.
would this one be better?
Yeah. That sounds good.
Okay. So I think it's just I have to hold my phone. Okay.
Do you want to try it without the phone to see if that works one more time so you don't have to hold your phone?
Without the phone, it would be this.
Yeah, that works. You just have to speak up a little bit, I think.
Okay. And
So
then it
it's
would
up
be
to you.
one, but you guys said it's a little fuzzy, right? This one's a little fuzzy.
We can hear you on that actually. I think it was probably the way you were holding your phone.
What do you mean? I think because now my phone's closer to me.
Yeah. So we can hear you through your phone right now
Okay,
or
you
your
guys can
computer, but for the computer
fuzzy.
you just gotta speak a little louder.
Okay, so with this one, you want me to speak louder? Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's not fuzzy or anything, right?
No.
Okay.
Awesome. And then if you can like maybe move closer to the screen or maybe like tilt the camera down a little bit because we're just getting like your head, the top of your head. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, cool. So yeah, we got like 15 minutes. Just let us know if you have any more questions. We're also going to be communicating in the chat, maybe the last like 5 minutes. So like from 6:25 to 6:30. If you have questions, can we just keep that in the chat?
No doubt. And
But yeah.
so, Santi, I don't know if you've seen, but Sheena is asking a good question here in the chat about the YouTube.
Yeah, so what we're gonna edit it out later.
Respect.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for answering that, Santi. I didn't do an audio check, so I just want to make sure folks can hear me as well.
Yeah, you're all good. We
Okay,
can hear
great.
you. Thanks.
Um, okay, we have Johanna on. Santiago.
Hey, Johanna. Hey, Johanna.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
We're just doing audio and visual checks, so you're all good. We're gonna
And
start in 10 minutes.
okay, great, perfect. I'll see you soon.
Okay, see you soon.
Bye.
Peace, y'all. I don't know if everyone's able to see the chat, but Sheena's asking if heads could list their affiliations there in the chat. That would be greatly appreciated. Peace, peace, comrades. Welcome. And I would like for us to start, if we could, with a moment of silence for the grandcestors, our movement sisters and brothers, the freedom fighters who we've lost in just this past few months, just this past year. If we could please take a moment of silence. Y'all know the names. It's too many to recount just here, but if we can take a moment for all of these freedom fighters, warriors who are now ancestors within this recent period. Greatly appreciate that. And we are extremely amped to get up with you all, to acknowledge, to commemorate, to reinvigorate our collective commitment to the struggle to bring Mumia home on this day, July 3rd, which marks 42 years since the frame-up conviction of our dear, dear freedom fighter and comrade and voice for the voiceless, Mumia Abu Jamal. And so the title of tonight's virtual rally is The People versus the State. And we recognize that Mumia, our freedom fighters who are the leading edge of our movements here in the belly of the beast and globally, we recognize that our freedom fighters on the inside, our political prisoners, prisoners of war, are the ones who have consistently interrogated and kept in their sights and in our sights the nature of this state, this beast that continues to cage the best among us, as one of our dear freedom fighters and former long-standing political prisoner of war, Brother Jalil Muntakim, often says. And so if we could take a moment to uplift the names of some of these warriors, these freedom fighters, these sisters, brothers, comrades, legends on the inside who we need home immediately. Free Mumia, free Brother Leonard Peltier, free Reverend Joy Powell, free Imam Jamil Alamin. And if we can populate the chat wherever you're at, if you could shout them out, y'all know the names. They are far too many. And it's not just here in the domestic colonies of the United Slavers, but it's global in terms of this political prisoner struggle, which we can never let up on. Free Dr. Afia Siddiqui, free Brother Kamal Siddiqui, free Comrade Kwame Shakur, free Comrade Kevin Rashid Johnson, free them all. And we are here to continue to uplift those names and many more, those names that perhaps we don't know, but need to get to know. And with Mumia, who is constantly uplifting these names, constantly engaging in that popular education work of recognizing the sacrifice and the commitment of our freedom fighters on the inside, political prisoners and prisoners of war, as well as the righteous, the necessary, vital struggle of the Palestinian people and the multiple compounding genocides that we are facing out here, from Palestine to the domestic colonies here in the belly of the imperialist beast of the United Slavers, to Sudan, to Haiti, across the board. Because in real terms, what does it look like for any movement, for any revolutionary struggle, to forget about, to turn its back on the political prisoners, the prisoners of war, who put everything on the line, who are the best among us. Without them, we don't have a movement. And so we're here to acknowledge that, to recognize that, and to continue the struggle to bring Mumia home, to continue the struggle to free Palestine such that we can free ourselves. And so we are extremely enthusiastic, excited, amped to connect with some of these comrades who are engaging in that struggle, continuing this fight, continuing the work so that we can continue to build, we can revitalize each other's struggles, learn from one another, and grow as a movement so that we can bring Mumia home and bring them all home. And so I just want to shout out, as we celebrate this 42nd year, or rather, as we celebrate Mumia in this, the 42nd year since this false and corrupt conviction of our brother Mumia, we want to celebrate his righteous struggle against empire, which has been ongoing. We know that Mumia has written over 13 books at this point, with most recently dropping a reader, Beneath the Mountain, as far as the anti-prison work that he and so many other inside strugglers have been doing, as well as many others. Jailhouse Lawyers. We have Murder Incorporated. Speaking of empire, I strongly encourage all of us to pick up this work that Mumia has been doing inside the innards of the belly of the beast, in the innermost depths of these United Slavers, continuing to do the work and struggling for all of us on the level of scholarship, on the level of a culture of resistance, on the level of organizing as a jailhouse lawyer. And so we want to lift up that work against empire as it's crumbling all around us in ways that Mumia, among many others, have diagnosed for years and for decades. And we also want to just continue to uplift. Again, I mentioned Brother Leonard Peltier. We know that his parole was once again denied, and we are all deeply pained by this reality. And so we want to continue to struggle mightily for that brother and for all of our comrades on the inside. We want to shout out Julian Assange, who has finally been released, and we are thankful for the efforts that he has committed to this struggle against empire. And we want to just continue to call out, and wherever we possibly can, squelch, crush the ongoing genocides that we are faced with out here, that Mumia has always so clearly addressed in all of his work. And so I want to shift to my dear comrade Sheena to continue with these opening remarks. Much appreciated.
Peace, everyone. My name is Sheena. I use she, her pronouns. Really grateful for this program. Really grateful to my comrade Tag for contextualizing this moment for this genocide that we're witnessing on day 271, Operation Al-Aqsa floods. For contextualizing this moment 42 years into the wrongful conviction of our comrade Mumia Abu-Jamal. For as long as Mumia and U.S. freedom fighters have been imprisoned in U.S. jails, there have also always been movements to demand their liberation, the liberation of our political prisoners, the freedom of our political prisoners. And similarly, for as long as Palestine has been under colonial occupation by the Zionist entity, by the British, there have been movements and international solidarity struggles to fight for Palestinian liberation. These struggles, we know they are interconnected. Yeah, we know that they're connected in their resistance to imperialism. We know that they're connected in their resistance to militarism. We know that they are connected in their resistance to empire. And we know they are connected in their refusal to be silenced, their refusal to be erased, their refusal to be misrepresented by the state and by the media that have been bought out by corporate powers. And that's why tonight's panel, that the campaign to bring Mumia home, that's why our campaign has put together a panel and a program that unites the people and the students who initiated these really powerful encampments, these courageous encampments to fight for the freedom of political prisoners, to fight for the freedom of Palestine in this moment. Why are we connecting Mumia, right? Maybe a question among folks to these encampments, right? We know Mumia called into these encampments, and we're going to hear from him momentarily, right? He's often referred to as our long distance revolutionary. Yeah, if you haven't checked out that documentary, it's a really powerful one. Many have known about the struggle to bring Mumia off death row, and that struggle was successful in 2012. Many have known about the struggle to bring him home for decades. Many have known about his journalism, his work with the Black Panther Party, his scholarly contributions behind bars, his identity as a father, as a husband, and as a comrade. And just a couple months ago, many students from these encampments, who you'll hear from today, learned about Mumia for the first time, possibly, right? The students who joined and developed these encampments to demand that their universities stop being complicit in genocide. We're going to hear the profound wisdom that Mumia shared with some of the students at the City College encampment. We have a representative from the City College of Encampment who's going to speak to us today. We're going to hear Mumia's words for the Penn encampment. And so we just want to take a moment and lift up the force of inspiration that is Mumia. Mumia kind of embodies from the dungeon of empire, despite his deteriorating health, which has been caused by the state, despite 42 years of confinement, wrongful confinement, and being separated from his family and movements, he has been and remains one of the primary gateways into movement. Through his focus of training himself to be a gateway to struggle, a gateway for the younger generation. And so the reason that we are here today is because we want to continue to train our focus to be steadfast in our commitment to bring him home. And 42 years is 42 years too long. So with that, I just want to transition. We're going to share a video clip of what Mumia shared with the students at the encampment at City College on April 26th, at the height of these universities trying to repress these student movements that were calling for an end to genocide. And so I'll just transition there. Thanks.
Okay, I hope you guys are connected because we got it.
We connected. Go ahead.
Are we connected?
Yeah.
I greet you from the American system of mass incarceration. But what we're involved in right now, I think, is something called mass education. And City College, and Columbia, and Emory, and USC are all part of that process right now. That education is about the repression that Gaza is suffering under. It is a wonderful thing that you have decided not to be silent and decided to speak out against the repression that you see with your own eyes. So you are part of something massive, and you're a part of something that is on the right side of history. You're against a colonial regime that wants to steal the land from the people who are indigenous to that area. And you're saying that that is wrong. I urge you.
This is a call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
To speak out against the terrorism that is afflicting Gaza with all of your might, all of your will, and all of your strength. Do not bow to those who want you to be silent. It is time, right now, this day, this hour, this moment, to be heard and shake the earth so that the people of Gaza, the people of Rafah, the people of the West Bank, the people of Palestine can feel your solidarity with them. I am a student of the late, great Frantz Fanon, and I read him every day and think about his ideas. And when I see what is happening in Gaza right now, I know that right now, the people of Gaza are the wretched of the earth, and they are fighting to be free from generations of occupation. So it is not enough, brothers and sisters and students and acknowledge, it is not enough to demand ceasefire. How about this? Make your demand cease occupation. Cease occupation. Cease occupation. Cease occupation. Cease occupation.
Okay, am I supposed to be speaking now, guys? Am I on? Can someone say yes or nay? All right, okay. So I'm Johanna Fernandez. I'm part of the movement to free Mumia and the founder of the campaign to bring Mumia home. I'm an associate professor of history at Baruch College and at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And I'm here for a legal update. I'm very happy to be part of this community. Ultimately, we're here to change the world and free our political prisoners, and we cannot do that without collective and without community. Mumia may be calling during my remarks, so they might be interrupted. Okay, so why are we here in terms of the legal picture? We're here definitely to talk about how our struggle connects with Palestine, but we're also here to illuminate the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. So 5 years ago, in December of 2018, new evidence emerged in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal that opened up three possibilities: the possibility of freedom, a new trial, or at least the possibility of an evidentiary hearing about the new evidence that emerged in 2018. And the new evidence had been concealed for 35 years and was found in 6 boxes discovered in a remote location of the Philadelphia DA's office. It doesn't get crazier than this. In 2021, 5 years after frivolous delays, and 5 years after the discovery of the evidence, the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas finally heard Mumia's request for an evidentiary hearing to review the meaning and significance of the new evidence. But the court removed Judge Leon Tucker from the case, the only lower court judge in the history of the case of Mumia Abu Jamal who followed the law and granted Mumia relief in another claim, which was eventually lost on appeal. The case, to look at this new evidence, was reassigned to Lucretia Clemens, a judge who willingly misapprehended the law in order to uphold what is known as the Mumia exception, that the courts and the judges literally change precedent and the law to appease the Fraternal Order of Police and the political establishment that lobbies the courts in order to keep Mumia behind bars all of these years. This is a known legal development that's quoted in legal literature known as the Mumia exception. So what exactly was found in the 6 boxes? A letter penned in 1982, and Mumia was arrested in 1981. And this letter was penned in 1982 by Robert Chobert, who was the lead witness of the prosecution. And Robert Chobert, penned this letter at the very end of Mumia's conviction trial. In the letter, Chobert inquires about money owed to him by prosecutor Joe McGill. Literally, the letter says, "Where is my money? I've been trying to reach you and I haven't been able to. I'm resorting to writing your office to find out when I'm going to get my money." This letter suggests that Chobert's testimony against Mumia at trial was bribed and that he had a material interest in appeasing the prosecutor, Joe McGill, who had promised him something in return for his testimony. The letter is important because it is an example of prosecutorial misconduct, otherwise known as a Brady violation, which is quite sacred in the law among reformers. If the prosecutor who's supposed to uphold the law is engaged in corruption, you throw the case out. And we know this letter signals a Brady violation because Robert Chobert incurred absolutely no expenses during Mumia's trial. And sometimes people who testify are given money for cabs, for a hotel, etc. But that wasn't the case here. How do we know this? Because in 1995, Robert Chobert himself testified that he was a kept witness. He testified that during Mumia's conviction, during the trial, he was kept at a hotel, he was fed daily, driven to work by the police every night, and picked up after work in the morning. He was a cab driver. So why exactly did the prosecutor promise to compensate Robert Chobert at the end of the trial? That question would surely be asked and answered at an evidentiary hearing that, in fact, was denied by the judge that was appointed to the case, Lucretia Clemens. Mumia's attorneys filed another claim based on the new evidence that emerged in 2018. In those boxes, Mumia's attorneys found notes taken by the original prosecutor in the case, Joe McGill, in which the prosecutor tracked the race of potential jurors by writing B next to them or white or W next to them, signaling black or white. We know from the evidence that prosecutor Joe McGill excluded black jurors who were employed and allowed into the final jury white jurors who were unemployed. Essentially, he was trying to craft a jury on the basis of race and racial assumptions in order to get the conviction he was looking for, which is unconstitutional. The issue of discrimination in jury selection is known as the Batson claim, and it's based on a very important Supreme Court case. In any other case, the defendant would have gotten a new trial or would have had his conviction vacated or would have been set free on the basis of this new discovery, because the Batson trial establishes that you only have to look at the evidence. And if it looks like there's discrimination in jury selection, you throw it out because the bar for proving discrimination in jury selection is very low. Approximately 1 year ago, in March of 2023, Judge Lucretia Clemens ruled against Mumia, and she denied the Brady violation, saying that even if Chobert, the lead witness of the prosecution, was bribed, that fact would not have made a difference in the outcome of the case. The only problem with this logic is that by the original prosecution's estimation, Chobert was the prosecution's key witness. And it was his testimony that clinched the deal and got Mumia convicted. He was one of 2 people who said that they saw what happened the night of December 8th, 1981. The other person was Cynthia White, whose testimony, according to the prosecutor, changed over time. Judge Clemens also denied the Batson claim. And she denied the Batson claim again without a hearing on the basis that the claim was not filed in a timely fashion. The problem with Judge Clemens's legal logic is that she failed to consider that Mumia's lawyers would not have filed this Batson claim in a timely manner for the simple fact that the evidence was hidden from Mumia's attorneys for over 35 years. So there's absolutely no logic in what Judge Lucretia Clemens ruled. Mumia's attorneys had previously litigated a Batson claim in his case, but were denied the evidence they needed to prove the violation by the prosecutor's office itself. And it wasn't until the new evidence surfaced that they could clearly prove discrimination in jury selection. In September 2023, Mumia's attorneys filed this appeal to Judge Clemens's decision, and they filed it to the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, explaining that the judge's ruling misapprehended the law, misinterpreted the law, and that Mumia, at the very least, has the constitutional right to an evidentiary hearing. The DA's office of Philadelphia challenged our arguments in a motion they filed this last December in 2023. The problem is that the DA's office is engaged in a charade here. The charade that this is anything but a charade, that Mumia's case is anything but a charade. And I'm going to end quickly. When Larry Krasner was running for office in 2017, he acknowledged that Philly is the draconian law and order capital of the country, the district with the highest rate of incarceration of Black and brown people in the country. Krasner promised to change this, and he put emphasis on the city's conviction integrity unit, which has exonerated well over 30 people who were falsely imprisoned through prosecutorial misconduct, lying, and tampering with evidence on the part of the police to obtain convictions, the concealment of evidence of innocence on the part of prosecutors, and eyewitness misidentification. All of these are violations in Mumia's case. Mumia's case is truly a microcosm of these violations and a microcosm of the period of the 1970s and 80s when these violations were most rampant in Philadelphia, the high point of rogue white supremacy within the DA's office and police department in Philadelphia, the era of Frank Rizzo's reign, and the era of the McMahon tapes, a reference to the ADA, Jack McMahon, who trained prosecutors on how to exclude Black people from the jury, a tape that was leaked and became a scandal in the country and Philadelphia. Reckoning with the long history of racism in Philadelphia means granting Mumia the Brady claim, releasing him from prison for the concealment of exculpatory evidence by prosecutors, but also for having held him on death row unconstitutionally for 28 and a half years. I can go on. Mumia's set to call soon. I just want to say in closing that Mumia's freedom is really bound up in the resurgence of social movements in this country against white supremacy, against the carceral state. And it's ultimately bound up in a world in which Palestine is free. So thank you for being here, for joining this conversation, and we'll cross our fingers for this conversation that's about to happen between Mumia and the valiant students who gave this country and the university a run for its money and gave us a sense of justice, freedom, and liberation, and what it means to stand in that tradition.
Absolutely, comrade. Greatly appreciate that update and you walking us through those legal realities. And so, as the comrade said, Mumia is a gateway into movement. He is representing and enacting that gateway work into movement with students as we speak, and for another generation of strugglers, of freedom fighters, through this speech at this encampment and a number of other encampments. And so if we could hear from all of the panelists about what it is you were thinking while listening to Mumia's words, if you heard one of his sets of remarks live at the encampment, or hearing them just now, hearing them since they dropped, and how did his words have you thinking differently about your responsibility and your power as students? And if you could also weave into that a brief introduction so that we can all get to know better who you are, who it is, and what it is that you're repping. And if everyone could please respond to this one in particular. And again, as we know, Mumia might call at any time, at which point we'll pivot there. But who would like to start us off with that question? Just a brief introduction alongside how it is that you related to Mumia's words at the encampments.
I think I can start us off as a City College rep. My name is Hadika, and I am a undergraduate student organizer at City College, and I was pretty involved in the encampments. I don't think I was thinking much when Mumia called on, but feeling so much, feeling so deeply a sense of hope and a sense of power. I think everyone who is involved in our encampments is well aware of how interconnected these movements are, how the mass incarceration system is not at all disconnected from our people who are dying by the thousands every single day in Gaza. And so I was feeling just this sense of, we know what we're doing, a sense of hope, and a sense of just strength in the fact that we are intelligent and that we know this beast from the inside out, and we know every corner, we know how it works, we know its strategies, and we are still coming up. And we had having Mumia speak, I think, just symbolized the intersectionality and the truly the essence of what we mean when we say the people united will never be defeated.
I can give it a shot next. Hi, my name is Sophia, she, her pronouns. I'm at MIT with the Coalition for Palestine, and I was also very involved with our Scientists Against Genocide encampment over at MIT. Actually, I'm a almost former student. I'm going to graduate like at the end of summer, so I'm almost out, but was an undergrad during that time. But yeah, I mean, I think I've just been thinking a lot about what it means, like what our role is as students. I think especially during the encampments, it kind of broke down these like barriers between students and the broader community that, I think had started to be, broken down, especially in the Boston area. But I think as students, I realized that we had been playing a role in upholding those barriers between us and the rest of the community. And when we do that, we're basically just doing the institution's work for it. When we're actively, trying to create this separation between us and the rest of the community, whether for fear of retaliation, for fear of punishment, for whatever, like that's just proof that the MIT or whatever institution you're at is they're able to use you, right? Like they've now successfully used you to create that barrier between you and the community. And I think we've really started to break that down. It's become, so clear that, our role as student organizers, it's not like there's the student movement and we're, doing X, Y, and Z against this particular, section, and then there's everyone else and they're doing their own thing. Like, no, it's all the same struggle. We're all fighting the same things. The community at large, in the Boston area, like they have an interest in seeing institutions like MIT or like any of these, any of these complicit institutions. They have an interest in seeing them go down. All of the other institutions that aren't, they're like non-academic institutions that the community is fighting against, us as students, that should be our fight as well, and when we stop thinking about this like harsh separation between us as student organizers and us as like the broader community, these institutions are not, they're not just colleges. MIT is a landlord, MIT is an investment company, MIT is so much. Oh my God, I could talk forever about MIT. I hate that place. But but I don't know. I've really been thinking a lot just about like our role as students is that we have the ability to target these institutions in a way that the rest of the community can't, and that is very true. But that reality does not mean that there should be a separation between our movements. It means that we should use that to help further community demands and community fights within this. And so just hearing Mumia talk about, being on this right side of history, and I don't know, it's been a lot, and I feel like I'm rambling at this point, so I'm just gonna mute myself. But yeah, that's our role. We can fight these institutions in ways that others can't, but that doesn't mean that we aren't part of this broader community. And I think we're starting to act like we are part of this broader community, and I hope we continue to do so.
I'm going to jump in and just say, preach, amen, inshallah, shalom, all of the things. You just gave a whole sermon. My name is Steph Reed, and I'm a graduate student at Union Theological Seminary. Around the time of hearing Mumia's speech at the encampment, I was organizing a rally for my mentor and professor, Dr. Cornel West. One of my tasks was to help secure a speaker of Palestinian descent. Thanks to the love and support of my community, I was connected to a filmmaker named Khaled Jarar. In one of my conversations with Khaled, I asked him how he felt about student activists in the US and their contribution to the movement for a free Palestine. Khaled illustrated the stark contrast between the day-to-day realities and material conditions of folks living under occupation in Palestine and student activists protesting in the US. His answer resonated with me as a Black person witnessing race and class hierarchies in my community and becoming aware of the responsibility to advocate for those with less privilege, less access, and less protection. Or as Dr. West lovingly says, everyday people and the least of these. The truth is that student activists in the US are able to speak out, engage in nonviolent direct action, and set up university encampments under the protection of freedom of speech in a liberal university culture that normalizes civil disobedience. Even with the vicious backlash from conservatives and Zionist apologists around this anti-war movement, and the capitulation and cowardice of Columbia University President Manu Shafiq, the ability to publicly resist, call out genocide and the state of Israel is a privilege that Palestinians do not have due to being under vicious occupation. The reality is that Palestinian people face violent retaliation and further repression by the Israeli state and military for speaking out. That being said, currently the stakes are much lower for us as student activists in the US context. To me, it's our duty to use our privilege and to join the collective fight for collective liberation. Our lives actually depend on it. Civil rights icon Fannie Lou Hamer captured this moral imperative when she said, nobody's free until everybody is free. Now, some of you may say that although they empathize with the plight of the oppressed internationally, we have our own issues to attend to domestically. Now, in that regard, it's imperative that we heed the warning of artist and activist Audre Lorde. I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different than my own. Now, connecting back to Mumia's speech, it helps ground me in knowing that our struggles are interconnected. And the same imperial system that is currently decimating precious Palestinian people is the same imperial system that upholds systems of power and privilege that for centuries relentlessly exploit and subjugate Black, brown, and marginalized folks right here in the US. So we must resist. It is our right. It is our duty.
I'm gonna jump in after that. You talking about a sermon? That was a word. I am Nicholas Brown. I'm from pronouns he, him. I'm from the Columbia encampment, student organizer with Quad, Columbia University Apartheid Divest. Um, Echoing everything that everybody has said already, I think that for me, the first thing that I thought about when we played Mumia's speech at the encampment was ancestry. Um, I think that when we first started the encampment, I kind of had this moment of um, thinking about kind of the people that walked before us, that did this work before us. I know that for Quad, we kind of modeled or took inspiration from the 68 protests that happened on our campus, the 85 protests that happened to get divestment from South Africa. So ancestry was, and elders were already thinking, or were already at the center of the work that we were doing. But I think that hearing someone who's been doing this work for so long, who I heard about back home in Durham, North Carolina, in organizing spaces there, that I hear about in organizing spaces in Harlem and everywhere else. Hearing that person amplify kind of this movement and this moment, and connect it to kind of this larger struggle that we've all kind of been fighting for in real time, just kind of sealed it for me. And so I think that for me, my definition of ancestry changed. I think that um, I think about what it means to walk in the steps of radicals and revolutionaries from all experiences and from all places and locations. And that kind of guiding the work that I do, and it not just, you know, the work that my ancestors did personally always is at the center of that. But for me, the family and the collective and community of people that do this grew. And Mumia became a part of that. And so I think that ancestry is kind of at the center of how I view the work that we have to do now. And even when I think about the younger generations that are fighting for Mumia's freedom.
Hi, I guess it's my turn to go. I'm Bisan. I'm a Temple Student Justice for Palestine, and I was heavily involved in the Penn Reza Solidarity Encampment. I think a lot of the points that everybody touched on were like great points and like what I was thinking about, but also like that point of like feeling like when you hear Mumia speak, whether it was at the CUNY encampment or at the one he gave at our Penn encampment, it was the feeling of that steadfastness that Mumia has. That after years of incarceration and brutalization, that he's still going. And I think that plays back to the steadfastness of the people of Reza. That after 271 days of brutal genocide, that they're still going and that they're still moving. And I think when you hear Mamiya speak like that, it gives us as students to keep going, because anything we experience during these encampments are nothing compared to this experiences of Mumia or the experiences of the people of Palestine, people of Gaza. And I think hearing him speak about break down the occupation and just keep going, I think that's something that like plays in my head a lot. Just keep going, keep going, keep going, no matter what it is to happen. And I know with a lot of these encampments, people say, well, I give up this and I give up this, but like many have given up this, but you keep going. And this is not the first time that students have been at the forefront of these movements. And getting your schools to divest, it's happened before. Our schools have divested, for example, from the South African apartheid. It can happen. So I think just what I hold on to is that saying of just keep going. Just keep fighting these imperial powers. Just keep going.
Outstanding responses. Greatly appreciate that. I'm gonna shift it to my comrade Sheena. Do you want to take the floor with another question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for y'all's important remarks. I just want to make sure with Comrade Johanna that Mumia has not called in. Let us know if he does. We'll gladly pivot to that. Uh, Thank you, Misan. You were specifically almost bringing me to tears. Thinking about steadfastness and thinking about the ways in which Gazans keep going, despite continued displacement, 11, 12, whatever amount of times, for decades. And thank you to everyone else for your commitment. I want to bring us to like really just thinking about the moment when each of y'all's encampments first began, right? What first brought you to the encampment, right? I'm thinking specifically about Columbia being like one of the first schools that kind of initiated the encampment, and that doesn't mean that there wasn't radical action taking place in campuses across the United States and across the world. But what did you think when you first joined these encampments? What are you thinking now that it's summer, that maybe these encampments are on pause, but still really thinking about, the upcoming semesters or, just your continued work over the summer? Another kind of thing that I'm thinking about is as you were in it, right? What are ways in which you were able to take care of each other, take care of yourselves, take care of each other? I know I personally got to visit the Penn encampment several times over and over again, and got to offer, yoga services and that kind of stuff, but and drop off things. But the everyday, right? It was raining some days, it was cold many days. How was your mental and physical health during the encampment? As you faced police brutality, as you faced repression, how has it been since then? So these are many questions, right? And just curious to kind of hear how y'all came to these encampments and yeah, what's keeping you going, as Bisan shared.
I guess I could start because Columbia was called out. But I think for me, I think that I think coming back to the concept of ancestry, and thinking about kind of all the people who had shaped my kind of journey with this work, the people that I'd organized with in the past. I think that when I think about like the first night that we set it up, that's who I was thinking about. It's like, oh, is this the work that, has been a part of this history for so long? Is this what we wanted to see? Um, I'd be lying if I said that I thought the work was going to grow into the global movement that it's become. Um, I think at the time I just thought about Columbia and I thought about the work that, and I want to reiterate that there was radical action happening before the encampment at Columbia and other schools. And so I was thinking about that fight, with where we are, with the power that we have in this space, in this institution, what change can we make here? And maybe we'll inspire other schools in the city. Maybe we'll inspire people down the street. Either way, this is where I'm focused. Um, and so I didn't think about, kind of the spark of this grand movement or, kind of inspire students. I think that for me, when we talk about, when you ask like what kind of brought us to the space, I just thought about Palestine. And I thought about what we were already fighting so hard for and seeing on a daily basis. Um, in terms of kind of where I'm at now, what kept us going, I think that for me, it was about care. That was central to our work from jump. The first night that we set up the encampment, it was long and it was cold, and people had to stay there because we had to physically hold our ground. And so I remember students bringing supplies and bringing blankets for people. I remember people bringing in food to students who were suspended and couldn't access the dining halls. I remember people bringing in tents. Um, and so that was how our movement started, was acts of care. It was looking out for one another. It was keeping each other awake on security and patrol. It was all these different things. Um, and that happened at Columbia twice. It happened at the first encampment and when we set up the second one. Um, and so I think that for me, like recognizing and remembering that care is central to the way that we organize and the way that we do this work. And that we still have to hold on to that because we're still struggling. We had to hold on to it through the police ratings, to the arrests, the expulsions, the suspensions, the harassment, the doxing, but we also have to hold on to it in the still moments when we're recovering, when we're coping, when we're trying to figure out what our next step is. And so as we look forward to kind of the next academic year, the work that we're doing right now in the summer, because we're still keeping it going, I think that care is central to that. And I was thinking, we talked about Audre Lorde in the encampment when she said that caring for myself and caring for each other is not self-indulgence, it's political warfare. And so I think that that has to remain central and not only help bring me into the movement, bring me into the encampment, but also help this stay there. So yeah.
I oh okay, I'll go for it. Yeah, I'll go next. Kind of just jumping off of what Nicholas said because I mean our decision to kind of launch encampments, both at MIT but also just generally in the Boston area, I think that there was kind of an itching to do something a bit more than what we had been doing with the rallies and the walkouts and things like that. And then I think seeing what was happening at Columbia, I mean, I remember, I mean, some of us at MIT were watching like the congressional hearing and then watching the encampments unfold like soon after that. That congressional hearing was a circus. We went through something similar in November, but I think you guys got it much worse later on. But we were watching that. We were watching, you know, the encampment at Columbia unfold, just in real time, and really just following it and thinking. You know, I think we had like a solidarity walkout, maybe a day or two after, but even then, we were just kind of thinking like, we can like this is a moment and we would be amiss to not take this moment to do something similar over here. And I also definitely appreciate the people at Columbia. I mean, they always, you know, from the jump were like, you know, don't do these actions like in solidarity with Columbia, like just join the fight for Palestine in this way, right? And I really appreciate you guys for keeping that message strong despite uh, all of the media around the encampments and stuff like that. Like I think you guys worked very hard, and all the campuses I think worked very hard to try to keep the focus on Palestine as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, I think like a day or two later, somebody was like, I'm just gonna buy like 10 tents on Amazon. We're just gonna hold on to that just in case anything happens. And it took a couple of days before we finally went for it. I also want to give a shout out to our comrades, not just at MIT, but all the other Boston area schools, because there were a number of them that did encampments. So there was an encampment at Harvard, Northeastern, Tufts, Emerson. Emerson College faced the brunt of police brutality by the Boston PD. Over 100 people mass arrested from all across different schools. But yeah, it was a pretty bad night. Some of our folks at MIT were there as well. But yeah, I mean, I think there was honestly a bit of hesitancy. I feel like, you know, if I'm like doing like personal reflection, like right before we were doing this encampment, kind of this like, you know, are we really doing this? You know, are we prepared enough? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? And we definitely did a lot of preparation, but I think there was something about just taking that leap together, like taking that leap together to do this very um you know, different form of struggle than we had in a while, and a different form of activism that has existed in MIT in a long while. I think we've really kind of activated the campus in that way. It took a lot of trust, you know, it took a lot of trust. And I think the people I knew before the encampment that I went into the encampment with, the people that I met during the encampment, like these, I trust some of these people just about as much as I trust anyone in my life. You know, like these are people that I trust so deeply. These are people that I have put, you know, my health, you know, I've, you know, on the line for. These are people that, you know, trust me. They're people that I trust them. Um, and I think that's just kind of the nature of kind of being in struggle together, is that that trust builds really quickly. Um, in terms of the day to day and kind of just supporting each other, I mean, similar to Colombia, we had people on meal plans were bringing food down. We had organizers from the community bringing bringing food, bringing blankets, bringing hand warmers, all of that sort of thing. Since we had a couple of encampments going on in Boston at the same time, if somebody had too much food over there, they would bring the food over to our encampment. If we had too many blankets, we'll send them over to Northeastern. If Tufts is facing a police raid, then some people will head over there and make sure that they have enough folks for night watch. Like, we were all kind of just trying to keep an eye on each other, and kind of exemplify that sort of care. I want to make one point on, just surviving the elements of sorts, just coming from a somewhat techie type of school. The rainproofing team at our encampment, I think, was kind of phenomenal. They like set up this weird like piping system to like let the rain like flow out like in another area so that things didn't get wet. And so I don't know, there was just a lot of creativity that I think came out of the encampment that you just don't see in like a regular setting. Like, we were all learning, we were all educating one another. We were having teach-ins about resistance. We were having teach-ins about struggles from around the world. I feel like I've learned so much about myself and so much about other people, just from being in that encampment. But yeah, I think I'll stop it there.
I was smiling when Nicholas was talking because it's really cool to see, like, in hindsight, the just how time and space works, because I remember being in that moment, when we were first starting everything up. It was like, I go back and forth. The part of it was like, all right, we're just gonna keep doing what we've been doing for months, for years. But there was also a moment of like, nah, this feels a little different. Like, this feels like something that is gonna go down in the books. And it was, subhanAllah. But I really want to give a shout out to CUNY. Everybody says it, and I'm going to say it and amplify it super loud, that CUNY has been the beating heart of organizing for Palestine, not only in New York, but across the country. And I'm so honored to be a part of it. I stepped into the scene in my freshman year, just like amazed at how they've been holding it down for years. So when it comes to talking about ancestry, I think about the people around me. I think about how many people have paved the road and kept the momentum going, so much so that we had this window and this opportunity to organize with the amount of success that we did, and with sort of the amount of audacity that we did, which also I think just reflects a big sense of like love and hope that they had for the future, which makes me feel like a warm hug. But in regards to just CUNY in general too, I think we also felt a really big responsibility being in Harlem, with the revolutionary history in Harlem, and just how rich radical activism has been all throughout Harlem. It just felt like we took that. We didn't take that lightly. It felt like we needed to really live up to those standards. And not to mention, I think within the first week we started, I could be wrong on this, but the second public university that had started encampments after Cal Poly. And even within that, shout out Cal Poly organizing and their encampments, because they really stepped it up. And I feel like we all noticed a very big shift there, where they took a very radical approach. When they said by any means necessary, they meant it. And we really took note of that. And we knew that as the only other public school within that game, within that climate, that we had a big responsibility, because we are holding so much weight within the working class, within people of color on our campus. And I think that also kind of ties into how I'm feeling post encampments. The tents went down, but the movement is still up and running, alive and well. But we made it a really big intentional point to really blur the lines between where the campus starts and where the city starts, and where the students are and where the people are. And I think, we knew we needed to do that to break down these divides that have been created intentionally, systemically, by the oppressor to divide the people. And I think in doing that, not only did that make the encampment itself so rich and so beautiful in the moment, but it also allowed us so much room to continue after the tents went down, because we knew at some point it was going to happen. We know how the police state works. We know the NYPD, but it's allowed for us to also build so many connections and foster a beautiful space in which, now into the summer, we keep it pushing. We have so many people in our community that were there at the encampments, and now we're bringing even more people into the streets, occupying buildings, occupying museums. It was just the start. And so I think, after encampment, there's so many reflections, but I think for the most part, it's just really just, I don't know how we did it. I don't know how we did it. Just a lot of flabbergasted. And then in regards to taking care of each other, taking care of ourselves, I think, at least in my experience, when you have a love for what you're doing, when you're doing it with the right intentions, in organizing, it's energizing in itself. And it's hard to not. I don't know what you mean by like take a mental health break, because this for me is where I'm getting my mental health break in finding purpose. They say Palestine is freeing us. It was at the encampments where I felt the most protected, the most safe with my people around me. And we really, really embodied, we keep us safe in every way, whether it was within the mutual aid, whether it was in, food security and having our public libraries, or whether it was in literally pushing out a public safety officer that came into our encampments. You had 100 people right there backing up that person, that activist that was with us. And so I felt so much security in that moment. And I think that was only just like a little snippet, a little taste of what, like, true liberation could look like, was the moments that I felt in that encampment.
Fire discussion. Greatly appreciate all of y'all's responses. And as a Harlem native, I can't help but continue to shout out Harlem with that. Greatly appreciated, Hadika, and the long history of CUNY and City College, in particular, as also known as Harlem University, and the struggles around the Morales Shakur Center, which these very same slave patrollers and alphabet boys, etc., shut down and vamped on about a decade ago. So shouts to y'all for upholding that legacy. And the Morales Shakur Center is alive and well. That spirit is still out here, clearly. So much respect. And want to continue in the vein of this question of the student intifada, the global intifada, and as you're saying, the blurred lines between student struggles and the ongoing struggles across the board, across all sectors, that this is an overall community struggle, and we're piercing these disconnects and these barriers and these boundaries that are placed around students, placed around professors, etc. And so looking to get y'all's sense of some of the struggles that you faced in representing a student and global intifada. What were some of the victories during the encampments? And y'all spoke to some of them. If we could highlight some of those victories, as well as some of the risks and challenges that you and your movement and our movement faced in that particular moment, as well as recognizing the courage that you all clearly demonstrate by coming through and struggling in this way, by starting encampments, by carrying forward encampments. And then this question of commitment and sacrifice, as movement people, we recognize that you have to sacrifice to do this work. Some may say that you sacrificed a lot. Certainly, questions of careers, questions of standing in your school and in other places, doxing goes on, etc. And there may be some who say, that's your duty, that's our duty as movement people, as strugglers, as resistors. So how are you thinking about this question of sacrifice and or duty, and the consequences that you and your comrades are facing, given all of the retaliation that we see that has occurred and that continues to occur and will continue to occur, risks of doxing, punishment, etc. I'm wondering if y'all could share with us some of y'all's experiences with that.
I can start this one off. I would say, like, for me personally, like, what it means to be a part of this, like, global intifada, the student intifada, for me, it means continuing the work that my grandparents died doing, the work that when they were brutally exiled from their home in the Nakba, that they did, and they continued with, like I said, that steadfastness, and the work that my parents did back in Palestine, and when they had to come here, not out of want, but out of just needing to come here and having to come here because of the brutal occupation. And I think that's what it means to me. I think it's just continuing that work. I think meaning that, like, when I look 20 years down the line, I didn't watch as my people were buried under rubble and brutally murdered by a Zionist entity. I think that when we talk about like these encampments, and like many will talk about the sacrifices that us students took, and that like we gave up so much, and as someone who has been brutalized by the cops and doxxed and etc., I don't see it as a sacrifice, because I see it as we need to do this, because I always emphasize that whatever we went through here is nothing compared to the treatment of the people of Gaza, of the people of Palestine. This is what you need to do to be able this is what you need to do to be able to fight these imperial powers. Sorry, I don't know if you guys hear that, but I think that like when people say sacrifices and oh you gave up so much and you're so courageous, it makes me feel that like oh like this is like a burden on me. This isn't a burden. Like I chose to be in this movement. I chose to continue the work. I think everybody needs to continue this work. And even when the bombing stops doesn't mean the genocide has ended, because it continues. It still continues with the brutal occupation. It still continues when the Zionist entity has left 1 to 2 million people in rubble. So to me, this isn't a sacrifice, and being doxxed or being brutalized, that's just not like this isn't a burden on me. And I think even the struggles we had through the encampments, like with the Penn-Reza Solidarity encampment, it was 3 schools that initiated this encampment on one campus. And you can see how much struggles and how much distrust would come from that. And it was just moving forward and remembering that even with the differences and even with everything we've gone to, or that we're all here for one thing, and we're here for the people of Gaza. We're here to free not just the Palestinian people, but all people. We're here to fight for what we need. And I also think that like when we talk about your role in the student intifada or like the global movement, there's always this thought within students that nobody wants to admit, is that we are complicit. When we go to these universities and we pour hundreds of thousands of dollars in this education system, to go and they take that money and go to bombing our own people, when they take that money to gentrify our neighborhoods and kick out the Black and brown communities that built that neighborhood, I think the reason we really are steadfast for this movement and why we won't give up is that we also all feel the sense of complicity, that when we pay the $30,000 to complain for 4 years, that same money is taken and is bought bombs, and these universities fund that. So I also think the part that we play is a sense of like we are complicit. As much as we like to think that we are not, we are, because we are complicit here in the gentrification and the displacement of Black and brown communities. We are responsible for the displacement of Palestinian people back home because we fund it. So I think that's a big part of how we play into these roles and why we are so, me personally, so into the movement, because in many ways I paid for the genocide of my own people. So just continuing that work, continuing the work of our parents and our grandparents, I think that's like my role in the movement.
I just want to lift up Bisan's profound words. When the bombing stops, occupation continues. So in considering that and thinking about, what's at stake, what we risk, wins and losses, I got to be honest and just name this. First and foremost, I have to acknowledge my own privilege. Having institutional support that protects and supports our activism and organizing efforts is something that not all student activists have access to. That being said, one major thing that came out of this moment was that my own school, Union Theological Seminary, which is a seminary affiliated with Columbia University, was one of the first schools to begin divesting from companies that profit from genocide in Palestine. This moment was a beacon of light in the student activist moment and movement. I remember being at the encampment and Columbia University students expressed their respect and admiration for not only our work, but the ways in which our university was making tangible efforts to be on the right side of history, setting the tone for what could be possible. One of the victories I'm most proud of is the interfaith worship service that my comrades and I facilitated. It was a beautiful moment of collective love, hope, and transcendence, embodying what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as a beloved community. It was an hour-long service in the liberated zone at the Columbia University encampment. It was attended by our president, Serene Jones, as well as faculty, students, and alumni of Union Theological Seminary. Food was shared, and we held communion while I played keyboard and sang and led songs and worship music for everyone throughout the service. Union Theological Seminary also hosted PALFest, the Palestinian Festival of Literature. And this was significant because the festival was unable to secure a venue due to it being too controversial at the time. It was moderated by Michelle Alexander, who was a visiting professor and student at Union Theological Seminary, and featured Ta-Nehisi Coates, Rashid Khalidi, Jewish Voice for Peace, and Nora Erekat. My takeaway from PalFest was when Coates drew comparisons between the movement for Black lives in the face of Jim and Jane Crow, segregation and racism in the US, and apartheid in Palestine. His analysis helped to give me the language to have difficult conversations with friends, family, and community members about the complex nature of the violent relationship between Israel and Palestine. In this regard, to the challenges that I face, there were moments when I found it difficult to balance my studies as my life became completely consumed with the day-to-day commitments of being in service at the Columbia University encampments and local New York City protests. But when I think of the genocide, when I think of the occupation and the subjugation that Palestinian people are dealing with, when I think of babies' heads being beheaded, when I think about women and children buried under the rubble, innocent civilian lives being stolen at a catastrophic rate, and I find strength and a sense of urgency to show up in the best ways that I know how. To fight with all of the tools that I have available to me. This is a moral imperative that Martin Luther King Jr. warned us about. In this hour, our history needs a dedicated circle of transformed nonconformists. Our planet teeters on the brink of annihilation. Dangerous passions of pride, hatred, and selfishness are enthroned in our lives. And men and women do reverence before false gods of nationalism and materialism. The saving of our world from pending doom will come not through the complacent adjustment of the conforming majority, but through the creative maladjustment of nonconforming minority. Simply put, and as Audre Lorde warned us, your silence will not protect you. We must resist. We must fight.
Yes, echoing everything that Steph and Basan have said already. I think that for me, there was an understanding of, like you all said, acknowledging kind of the privilege and power that we hold as students at these institutions. And so for me, that was the first understanding of duty, was that as a Columbia student, as a college student who has access to this institution's resources and is paying this institution that is now funding all of this work, I think that for me, it was understanding that we had to locate that power and work to dismantle that. But it was also kind of my duty as a student of radical movements, as a student who has been in kind of Black organizing, Black liberation organizing spaces before October 7th, to locate power, to find the work that I could do in the space that I had and in the role that I was playing. And so I think that duty is interesting because they're never, like y'all said earlier, there never felt like there was a choice. As somebody who's been in this work as a Black queer person, it didn't make my being was in the work long before there was a question of like how we were going to do it or where we were going to do it. My being was already focused on Palestine and with Palestine. And I think that that was important for me to recognize what brought me to the work, what held me accountable in the space when we started doing the work, because there were challenges, and I'm sure that everyone can relate to it. Challenges with infrastructure, challenges with people finding roles, but also the challenge of creating a politic as a group. The challenge of acknowledging the ways that that everything from patriarchy to racism to classism and sexism were infiltrating our organizing spaces. And so it was important for me to kind of hold on to the values and the beliefs and the practice of love that brought me into the space because it was needed to do the work within that space. And I think that going forward, when we talk about kind of building a coalition, a global coalition of freedom fighters, of movement leaders, I think that for me, it's really important that we all kind of ask ourselves what ties us to the work. Um, I think that it was very important, especially as Ivy League students, as college students, Columbia students, to ask ourselves, like, are you actually connected to the work that we're doing? Or are you trying to act from a selfless place? And to me, kind of selflessness has always been a little interesting and somewhat dangerous in organizing spaces because to me, you should constantly recognize and be aware of the ways that you are complicit in what's happening, the way that you, as a person with the power and privileges that you hold, affecting the world. Um, and so to me, that was something that we had to come back to often was this question of how are we holding ourselves accountable? Who are we accountable to? The Harlem community, the Columbia community, the folks in Palestine, the folks at all these other schools. And so duty and responsibility ended up being something that we had to come back to a lot. And I think that going forward, when we talk about building a global movement, I think that that's a question that we have to ask at every single step.
I love everything you just said. You guys are all so cool. It's such an honor to be in this space. But like, just want to take 30 seconds to just touch on the idea of risk. I think about the concept of jihad a lot in Islam, which is the fight or a struggle for the sake of Allah, the sake of a righteous cause, the sake of a cause that's bigger than yourself. And in this pursuit, nothing else matters. When you are pursuing something righteous, pursuing something for a good cause, batons, tanks, guns, they don't mean anything anymore. That's why you see the people in Gaza, they pray for martyrdom. They pray for martyrdom every single day. And so I think about the fact that yeah, I guess I really love what Bisan said, but I think there is a sense of like there is a bit of sacrifice, right? Like there is a sacrifice of, you might get suspended, you might get arrested, but it's not in vain. It's not in vain, and it's for a bigger purpose. And when, I think orienting around that kind of framework just makes life itself feel like it's bigger than just yourself. And I mean, like, it's also this is definitely something that we all are very familiar with. Like I know everybody is out here flexing their Canary missions profiles, like they're like, yeah, like that's me. It's true. And I think that's something that we should just be beautifying more. Being labeled as a domestic terrorist by the imperial empire, disgusting colonial state is a compliment. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that. And I also am going to hop off now. I would love to hear Mumia speak, so I'm going to keep tuned in. But thank you guys so much for having me. Salam, comrades.
Thank you all for these powerful reflections. And just reminders of the privileges that we come with in building these encampments and the duty we have to our ancestors as well as to the people of Gaza. I want to bring us back to kind of thinking a little bit about Mumia, right? Mumia as a political prisoner. Arguably, one of the goals of the Hamas resistance fighters on October 7th, or on the day of Operation Al-Aqsa floods, was to capture Israeli hostages and to bring global attention to not just the Zionist entity's occupation and long-standing settler colonial occupation, but also to bring attention to the freedom for thousands of Palestinian political prisoners, right? I saw a number the other day that said up to 21,000 Palestinians are being held hostage, right? The Palestinian movement like others, revolutionary struggles, such as in Puerto Rico, chooses to pay homage to political prisoners and to prisoners of war, right? As the forefront of their movement work. In the United States, often I didn't learn about political prisoners up until maybe my 20s or so, right? We're kind of indoctrinated into thinking there are no political prisoners in the United States, right? And those might be broad generalizations, but I'm just thinking about like what is our personal awareness of political prisoners here in the U.S. What was our awareness of Mumia prior to? How are you thinking about the connection between the U.S. based campaigns to release political prisoners and the struggles of political prisoners across the globe, especially in Palestine in this moment? Why is this struggle to bring the attention to political prisoners one that in some ways barely gets attention, or at least only gets attention when radical action is taken, right? Or revolutionary action is taken. And then kind of if you're thinking about the importance of political prisoners in this moment and how we're thinking about these interconnected struggles, right? We're gonna kind of fix to wrap up in a little bit, but I also just want to hear if folks have, visions and hopes for how you want to kind of see these student movements expand in the coming year. How are you thinking about the struggle for Palestinian liberation in this moment and your job, your duty, your movement, and yeah, how you want to stay connected to these struggles moving forward?
I can try to give it a go. Briefly, I'll try to hit on both questions like a little bit. On the kind of thinking about why, you know, the fight for political prisoners' liberation is not something that, you know, comes up a lot in like the US and something that doesn't get as much attention as it deserves in the US, or in your, as you mentioned, kind of only comes up when radical action is taken. I think it kind of boils down to that, the use of imprisonment against, our freedom fighters, against our comrades is, I mean, it's trying to figure out what I'm trying to say. Like, I mean, it's a tactic, right? It's a way to uproot, these people from the communities, and it's something that we see, a bit more clearly, right after a radical action is taken. So somebody, takes some sort of action, they get imprisoned right after, and we can kind of see that immediate response to that action was taken. But that also, the state also acts in response to anything it finds a threat. And what does it find a threat? It finds threat in community. It finds threat in any form of organization, right? It finds threat in any autonomous grouping of people, any way that we start to organize ourselves outside of that system. And when it sees that, it's also going to attack that. It's also going to try to uproot that. And I think if we just, try to remember that all of these things that we do, whether it's the big kind of radical actions, or the less, splashy sort of like community building and base building, like all of those things are seen as threats to empire, and that's why they engage in these tactics to try to uproot that, to destabilize that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm somebody similarly. I mean, I was not really familiar or aware of political prisoners until I got to college. First through Palestine, and really hearing about Palestinian prisoners, and then kind of expanding out. I met some folks who were involved in like the Jericho movement and things like that in Boston. So I started to learn a bit more through that. But I feel like I still have a lot more learning to do. And um, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, you mentioned, I can't remember who mentioned it, that like Palestine is teaching us. That's something that I feel so deeply, through the encampments. I feel like the strength that I got to, you know, take these actions, right? I mean, we aren't the first people to do encampments. We aren't the first people to do any of the stuff that we're doing right now. Like, we are being taught, we were taught how to do this by Palestinians, by freedom fighters here in the US. Um, and I just feel very deeply that like those are my teachers. And I don't know, I can't like articulate how almost freeing I now feel that like I have I have been educated about a potential that I have that I did not know that I had prior to prior to the encampments and prior to this year, like I really do feel like I feel empowered, like in like an actual literal sense. Like I don't like not in like a cliched sense. I really don't know how best to explain it. Like it feels like a part of me has been unlocked that I didn't even realize could have been unlocked. Um, in terms of visions for the future, I mean, organizing is still going to happen. Like I said, I'm graduating at the end of the summer, so the organizing that's happening at MIT will kind of continue. But I'm seeing so much, you know, so much like tangible interconnection between different organizations. We have like a coalition for Palestine at MIT, and that includes not just we call it the Coalition Against Apartheid because it came from like the original Coalition Against Apartheid at MIT back in the 80s, but it's effectively the SJP right now. So we have like that organization, but the Black Students Union, the Black Graduate Students Union, the Asian American Initiative, all of these different groups have like really been very active in this, and we're really starting to see those like tangible connections being formed. I know their students are planning to really go after the increasing in policing and surveillance on campus. So that's a struggle that I know students are going to continue to take up. In the Boston area, there's like a presence of like Elbit and Maersk and all of these other targets of like the broader like movements, and so people are going to start kind of going after that sort of thing. Even in the sort of the wake of the encampments, we're already starting to see some of those tactics continue in the broader organizing. One struggle I'll briefly uplift is there's a sort of a community organizing space in Cambridge called the Democracy Center that's currently the owner is like this like billionaire, but it's been this like community organizing space for so long, and they're going to like temporarily close it in this rather undemocratic process. And so you have all of these very small community organizations that are going to lose this very precious space. And in response to that, they actually occupied the space for a couple of days in protest to demand that they be included in this process around the space. It was able to reopen negotiations, and unfortunately, I think the negotiations have now stalled. But the fact that like they launched into an occupation of the building for a couple of days, you know, and immediately kind of went back into that. It's like there's now like a muscle almost that I feel like hadn't been flexed in so long that I now think we're going to start to see more of. And so I'm really excited to see how that goes.
And speaking of like base building and like visions of the future, my vision for student movements in the coming year is one of sustainability and solidarity. This summer, I'm taking part in a 6-week summer fellowship, labor organizing with healthcare union SEIU 1199. I'm learning so much about organizing, activism, and how we can fight and win. One core organizing principle is the methodology made popular by Marxist leader Vladimir Lenin and Dalit social reformer B.R. Ambedkar, which is educate, agitate, organize. It is in this spirit that I envision music and art being at the vanguard of this current socio-political movement and struggle for Palestinian liberation. Music, art, and culture can be used to educate, agitate, and organize while being a tool for counteracting dominant culture. In my vision, music, art, and culture are a strategic weapon of nonviolent direct action for the insurgency. Cultural warfare is a viable and subversive front of struggle. Comrades, now is the time to apply pressure. The arts and culture provide a way for us to reach the hearts and minds of society. As artists, it's our duty to use our art in service to collective liberation from Palestine to New York City. Tony K. Bambara once said, as culture workers who belong to an oppressed people, my job is to make revolution irresistible. That is our job. That is our duty. It is imperative that we make the connection between intersecting struggles of Palestinian people who are being subjugated by the IDF and funded by our own US government, and the plight of Black, brown, and various marginalized folks here in the US who are catching hell due to our predatory capitalist patriarchal government, which serves the interests of the elite while simultaneously policing and exploiting the poor and working class people. We must have an international lens regarding our analysis because the connections between Cop City, police brutality on US soil, and apartheid in Palestine have catastrophic implications. Our struggles are interconnected. James Baldwin spoke to this when he said, our freedom is inextricably bound up with each other. We cannot be free until they are free. Comrades, the time for revolutionary action is now. The truth shall set us free. Through art, music, and culture, we can make our voices heard, wake up the masses. In the words of the great Paul Robeson, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. We are civilization's radical voice. In regards to Mumia and his work, I really got into him a year ago when my mentor, Dr. Cornell West, was speaking at a church in Philly, organized by Mark Lamont Hill, and it was like this. I was just really blown away at like just the profound like brilliance and wisdom and tenacity and resilience of the spirit of Mumia. And in the last week, I've taken the time to start digging into some of his books, including Murder Incorporated, Writings on the Wall, and Message to the Movement. And I just want to close out with this because it's connected to what I just said. And that Mumia said, "There's another important way to keep folks' spirits high, and that's music." He said, he went on to sing the song, "Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land." Songs such as these inspired many, many people and allowed them to face the horror and violence of police, jail, prisons, and prison guards, and even other prisoners who were forced to hurt them to keep them engaged in the movement. That's the power of music, y'all.
That's dope. Going off of kind of, I'll be really quick, but going off of what everyone else said, I think that for me, I think Mumia, I first learned about Mumia in high school, I think. I was doing work around the school to prison pipeline, and I think it was BYP 100 that came in and they talked about political prisoners. Shout out to them because I love them. Um, and that was the first time that his name had come up in my space or to me. And so I think that I knew of him before we started the encampment. I don't think I recognized kind of the movement that was surrounding political prisoners and the movement and contribution that Mumia had made until we actually started the library. Um, I helped start the People's Library that was in the Columbia encampment, and folks were throwing pamphlets and books over the fences and sending us stuff, all kinds of things. And we ended up with a zine that was talking about political prisoners and talked about had a whole section on Mamiya and his contributions in his literature. And I remember hearing people in the tent reading that and going, wow, I didn't know we had prisoners in the US. Wow, I didn't know that was a thing. Wow. Just having kind of that realization as I was also having it. And so I think that to me, we are in this really unique moment where a new generation is learning about this movement history and is learning about Mumia, is learning about political prisoners, is learning about coalition building. And I think that as we continue to like get that education and share this with one another, I think that we're going to realize that our position, somebody brought this up earlier, but our position is to help kind of every movement and every space because they're all interconnected. And I think that students are gonna, I'm really excited to see what that looks like. And in terms of the vision, I want to see that movement last. I want to see it be sustainable. I want to see us build kind of a defined and aligned politics that move us forward, and that isn't just a response to fear tactics and the media. Um, and I think the best part about my vision or my dream of kind of what this movement looks like going forward is that I can see it happening already because freedom dreaming was a practice that we started doing at the beginning. I think that it was beautiful to see that like students talked about what the encampment should look like, but we also talked about what a university should look like, what a country should look like, and started to do that work in real time. Um, and so for me to say that, I want to see a new generation learn about Mumia, learn about Black liberation history, learn about everything else, I'm also seeing it. I'm seeing my comrades and my friends and myself. I'm seeing people bring their children to come hear Mumia speak or to come hear other people speak. And so it's really just beautiful to see that this new generation that we are getting this, having these experiences and getting this education. I want to see that continue.
Safia Bisan, y'all are good. Wow. This has been a profoundly like touching panel to be able to just kind of like witness and moderate. I'm deeply inspired by all of y'all. I want to share a question from our YouTube audience. It's related to I'll just read it as is. It says war criminal Netanyahu is scheduled to speak before the US Congress on July 24th. What should be the movement's response to this invitation inside the US and worldwide as student organizers? I just want to say that like one thing I'm thinking of is the way in which our quote unquote progressive squad is probably going to respond to this is to be like, oh, we reject Netanyahu, we're going to boycott this speech, right? And then the ways in which they will continue to sign on to policies that continue to arm the genocidal army. And what does it mean that sometimes, like, as much as it's important to kind of protest this war criminal coming to the United States, what does it mean to also think about the focus on Netanyahu? And so, yeah, there are just a couple of y'all who want to kind of maybe specifically answer this question that came from our audience.
To be clear, the question was like, what should student organizers do? I think it's the basic, just organize. I also feel like expanding our organizing, a lot of times when we see big DC protests, it's like there's no reason to have a protest in my city because there's a big one in DC. And yeah, there's encouragement to go out there and show numbers and show that this war criminal is not welcome, but to do organizing in your city during that same week, during that day. Show that he's not wanted in every city. Show and honestly give these cops hell. Give them hell, whether it's in Washington, D.C. Make sure you're giving them hell in each city where there's massive, massive people protesting against him. I think as student organizers, and I think don't wait until Biden comes to town to organize or when these genocidal old men come to town for you to organize and make these big do it every day, do it every week. Don't wait for big things where you can make a nice flyer out of it and that's why you had the protest. Like do this every week, do this every day. Like it shouldn't be that just when he comes to town that we're protesting against him. No, like he should be at the forefront of what we're saying because he is genocidal and he is the reason why there's occupation in Palestine. Other than that, he's running the Zionist entity currently. So I think as student organizers, like even if he comes this week and like you're organizing next week, just still organize. And I think that like one thing I wanted to mention in like the realm of student organizing, it's not stopping because it's summer. Like I know everybody's cooking up something for the fall. So remember that you're everybody's always cooking up something and that like it's coming. So like don't just wait till these old white men are in town to organize something. Don't just wait until you're free to organize something. Like keep giving them hell. Give the police hell. That like everywhere they look there's massive amounts of people. And just as I kept saying this whole time, just keep going. And I think that like I want to emphasize that the organizing hasn't stopped and the organizing won't stop in the fall.
I'll speak on this very, very briefly. Partially because Benjamin Netanyahu, if people don't know, is actually an MIT alum. So that is, yeah, I believe the architecture department. And so, I think about that in the context of the genocide that's happening now. But I also just think about it in the sense of like, people like Netanyahu are who MIT is intended to produce, right? They're not really intended to produce any of the people that were doing the encampment. Lord knows they don't want us there anymore. They're intended to produce people like Netanyahu. Like he's not a he's not a defect. Like that's the purpose of these sorts of systems since MIT's founding in like the mid, I think like 1860s. Like that's always been the purpose of MIT, was to kind of produce these like technologically capable sort of like leaders for the imperial state. And so I think that's an opportunity for maybe organizing in Boston to highlight that, not just because he's in town, but also thinking about like what is the role of our institutions in producing people like this. But honestly, I very much agree with everything that Bisan said. Like, we don't have to wait until XYZ politician or XYZ, genocidaire is, coming to your city or your state. Like, the organizing has already been happening. The organizing has been happening at our schools. They've been happening in our towns. He's going to come. There will be organizing around that. There will be organizing after he comes. It's just, we're already continuing to organize and we're just going to keep going, as someone said earlier.
Yeah, I don't have much to add other than, yeah, we don't let spectacle dictate our organizing. And I think that um, it's really important that to recognize that that's a strategy that's used often to kind of create moments that are built out of fear, that are built out of kind of that rush. And it's important to focus on sustainable work that can happen. It doesn't mean that we don't organize around it, we do. But it does mean that we recognize that our aim is larger, and that the work has to continue beyond that. And I think, yeah, shout out to what everybody said already.
Organize, organize, organize. Period.
I love that. We don't let spectacle dictate our organizing. Thank you all so much. I just want to lift up and see if anyone has, I know you're continuing to organize. Are there ways that folks can stay abreast to some upcoming events, whether they're in your cities, whether they're at your schools or on your campuses, whatever you feel like you want to share that you can share. Please go ahead and lift up any of those announcements. Feel free to share the handles of your particular organizations as well. Oh, and then it looks like there was another question from the YouTube, which is, where are folks with the charges? I think that's about people who were students who were arrested as it relates to encampments, if anyone has that to share.
I want to lift up, let's do more cross-campus collaboration. You know what I mean? Like, let's like figure out what that looks like. You know what I mean? Like how we can like share, not just only like share information of like how to deal with the material conditions, but how we can like create like this larger base building of like bigger impact, like by strategizing, by organizing, by like thinking together, about like how we can like make a larger impact. And that doesn't mean to give up like it doesn't mean to give up your initiative and to give up your mission in your moment. It just means to like think of building like cadre, think of building coalition, think of building like a larger united front and struggle through across these various universities and organizations on the outside. I think there's a lot to be there's a lot of ripe opportunity here, and I think I would love to collaborate with each of the panelists on, on this call of like how we can like make a larger impact and like work together truly.
Yeah, going off of that, I want to shout out the Quad and Black Intifada, which I think it's I met folks from the new school, but I don't know if it's all new school people. We've been doing a lot of mutual aid events in the city to give back to the communities that showed up for us during the encampment. Um, so I think be on the lookout for events like that. There's so much that's going on right now throughout the summer. Um, I think that it's important that we use this time to hone our craft, to give back, to build up inventory, because like Bisan said earlier, there are things that are coming. Um, and so I think that like obviously check Quad's page for updates, because that's where we post kind of the immediate actions. And then yeah, look out for stuff in the city because there are a lot of mutual aid events specifically that need resources and are taking donations.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of things to follow, definitely MIT_CAA, that's the Coalition Against Apartheid at MIT, but also PYM Boston, BDS Boston, and I think it's Nakba_75 Boston. They're a group in the area. They do a lot of autonomous direct action. So definitely follow their work. I'm so very inspired by all of the organizers in all of those community organizations. Like like the term mentor never really made sense until I really started to connect with people kind of intergenerationally through community organizing. So yeah, definitely keeping an eye on what's going on in Boston.
Just to add to that, like to keep up with what's going on in Philly as like we're still organizing, it would just be at like SJP Temple on Instagram and also the Philly Palestine Coalition. We do amazing work together and like that's like where our brick of organizing is.
Much respect. And if we're pieced off of those announcements, I am seeing what is it? It looks like at Union Seminary on IG. Shouts to that, much appreciated, comrade. And at CUA, excuse me, at CU Apartheid Divest, also on IG. And we've got at UTS.SLP, also on IG. So if we can continue to add to the chats and build in this way, let's add any of these other social media spots, upcoming events and activities and links if you want to put your contact information so we can continue to build in that way. That is extremely important as has been emphasized here. And if I could briefly, I want to shout out another activity, Mumia related activity coming up tomorrow, and this will be tomorrow, so-called Independence Day, which we know couldn't be a wilder title for this particular imperialist beast here, where our independence and self-determination is constantly being trampled upon. But so for those of y'all who are looking for something to do besides just avoid reactionary nonsense tomorrow on the 4th, and if you're in the New York City area, we've got a screening of a short feature that our collective ATP, which is about the people, which comes out of Spirit of Mandela and is the media wing of Spirit of Mandela and part of the process of building the People's Senate out here. We put together a short feature that we're continuing to build out. It's called Who is Mumia? And we would love to see y'all there. I'll just share some of the information behind that. The doors are at 7:30, and we'll be in Brooklyn. This is in DeKalb. It's on DeKalb in Brooklyn. If y'all could come through, it's a part of a series of screenings by a group called Free Films. And again, that film is called Who is Mumia? And it comes from About the People. And anybody that would like to get up with us and work on audiovisual interventions in this work, we're just really looking to build and see this as yet another vehicle for movement work and for building our grassroots organizing structure and infrastructure through visuals and audiovisual material. So shout out to all of y'all, and if y'all can make it out to our screening of Who is Mumia tomorrow, we would love to see you there. And if y'all have looks coming up where we could screen, that's great as well. And it looks like Mumia is on, so let me mute myself. Ideally, we can hear from him. Okay, excuse me. So it looks like
I need the meeting ID. Can someone give me the meeting ID quickly?
You have not entered
the meeting ID. Does anybody else have that? I'm looking right now. 283 457 6316.
Okay. I'm going to try this again. Hold on, Mumia. This thing is not working somehow. Okay. What is it?
Welcome to
283.
Hold on. 283
457
457
6316.
Participant ID.
By pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
Oh, God.
You are in the meeting
Okay.
now. There are 10 participants.
Okay, I think we're on. Mumia, can you speak?
I can.
Can you hear him?
Hello, you.
Peace, peace.
Hey.
Woo-hoo!
Hey. How y'all doing?
Peace,
Well,
Mumia.
you got questions. You better ask me right now before this damn thing blows up. So, go ahead.
Well, we have a bunch of students here who've had an incredible conversation, and maybe they can speak to you directly.
Very well.
Please jump in. Please jump in, please, for time. Please jump in.
This is Nick from the Columbia encampment. It's an honor to have you on here. Your message was so powerful when we played it at the encampment. I guess I'm just wondering if you have any words or of wisdom or advice for students going forward as we kind of think about the future and the future of our organizing work.
I would just say this, that it is I who am honored by how Columbia students have
This is a call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
have really politically analyzed the situation and proceeded to act with grace, class, and class consciousness. And by that I say many of the people who were charged refused to take deals unless those same deals were extended to the CUNY people, City University of New York people. And I know that Columbia is like premier university in New York, and that CUNY is really a working class university. So for Columbia radicals and students and protesters to take that position is just profoundly noble and human, just as the actual work protesting what can only be called geographical violence in Gaza or genocide. That's a principled position. And you're responding to that as human beings, feeling and sharing with the suffering people of the occupied lands that we call Gaza, that we call Palestine. So keep on doing the work you're doing. I think, you guys are walking along the right path of history, in my opinion. You're doing a great job.
Brother Mumia, may I ask a question?
Yes.
My name is Steph Reed. I'm a grad student at Union Theological Seminary. And in preparing for this moment, I read some of your work, including Message to the Movement. And that you talked about the importance of music in social movements and political struggle. My question for you is, in today's context, which is in some ways similar, right? And in other ways, it's different. I'm wondering your thoughts on the role of music, arts, culture, and spirituality in our current political climate.
Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution,
Well,
Mahanoy. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
Yeah, could you speak more on that?
Different times require different musics, and different musics exist in different periods and rhythms of history. During the Civil Rights Movement, the great Negro spirituals were plumbed and used and transformed during that movement. The Black Panther Party, a lot of people don't know this, but Black Panther Party during the Black Liberation Movement, they had their own band They had a pop band, and the name of it was The Lumpin'. And they were fantastic. But what they did is they took the great hits of that period, changed the lyrics, and kind of radicalized it. And they were a great band. They had great musicians. They were great singers. And but not many people heard them because they were very rarely on radio or but they would perform for Black Panther functions mostly in Cali, and they were fantastic. This is a new period. This is a new time, and it's a new technology. What that means, if you have access to music that you did not have, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So you're going to be listening to different kinds of music, but every movement needs music to move people, right? To give them validation, but also to project the stories and the spirits of resistance that is sometimes encoded in music, So find what turns you on and turn that shit up.
Mumia, what did it feel like to speak to students at the encampments for you?
It was wonderful, wonderful. I felt something I haven't felt in a really, really good long time. I felt like these encampments and protests were a throwback to the '60s. That was a long time ago, right? But a throwback to because back in the '60s, people were protesting against the Vietnam War, this great imperial war by the United States against a third world country. This is not that situation, but it's very similar because it is settler colonialism against an imprisoned people. People call Gaza an open air prison. Well, never is that clearer than here, where people cannot escape the F-18s, the bombs, the weapons of empire, really being lodged against what is essentially an unarmed people. Ain't no F-14s in Gaza flown by Gazans, right? Not that situation. It's an imperial power play. And so in that way it was similar. And I just felt a wonderful feeling of seeing students speak out against this kind of settler colonial violence. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I felt energized.
Hi, may I ask a question?
Please.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm a recent student with the MIT encampment. And again, just expressing so much gratitude that I was even able to kind of be in the space. It truly is an honor. One thing I've been kind of thinking about, and I think we talked a bit on the panel about the sustainability of these movements and, how we're all going to continue to organize beyond this moment. And as somebody who, you have participated and bared witness to, many of movements across, over the years. And, some movements, have their times when, there's kind of a flare up and, there's more attention towards it and there's a lot of energy. And then sometimes things die down and things flare up and they die down. And we kind of have the same sort of cycle that we've seen in the past. And so I'm wondering if you have any advice on how we can kind of think critically about how do we have sustainable movements, whether it's, fighting against co-optation, fighting against like new state tactics, or even just fighting against the natural ebb and flow of organizing that occurs if we're not being intentional about it.
Okay. What that takes is something that we do rarely see, except in rare occasions. And that's really to organize. And that means to talk about ideology, talk about how to resist, the tactics of the state. Think about Occupy. Some of you Some of you probably don't even remember Occupy Wall Street. I do. And what people have forgotten is that these people were attacked not just in the dead of night, but in the early hours of the morning when everybody was asleep. And the media turned off its cameras, and the police came in and beat people and intimidated people and ran them out. And that's because they were occupying the most powerful entity in America, Capitol, Wall Street. So, who works for Wall Street? Well, the cops do. And they will use any tactic whatsoever to intimidate and break people one from another. But the antidote to those tactics is unity, really talking with each other, listening to each other, and working to continue the unity of action that is rocking this country and, believe it or not, having repercussions around the world. People are studying this movement all around the world, not just eggheads like me and Dr. Fernandez. People are studying it because it's a moment of freedom amidst repression. So keep your voices loud, firm, affirm your friendships with your comrades and brothers and sisters, and keep struggling, because you're doing something incredibly noble for people that cannot do it for themselves.
Okay, we should ask the last question because there's probably not enough time. Go ahead, Besan.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bisan. I was with the Penn Neza encampment, and it's honestly an honor for you to come speak to us today. I'm gonna ask my question real fast. Is there any advice that you would give the students in the student movement, things on like what we can do better, or like where do you think where the student movement is going?
Well, because of your media, you know what? If Huey and Eldridge of the Black Panther Party had the social media that you had, we might have won. But because many of you are journalists, citizen journalists, and you have access to thousands and thousands of people, you have your own media. You cannot rely on the corporate media. You know this.
You have 1 minute left.
But you have your own. And that means using your ability to reach out and touch people and tell them the stories of your daily life, your daily work, so that people outside of the circle of students and grad students can learn and hear and support the work you're doing, because what you're doing is wonderful. I commend you all, whether you're at MIT, whether you're at Penn, whether you're at Columbia, whether you're at any university in America, and doing this kind of work. It will be difficult. It will be hard. It will be challenging. Sometimes it may be terrifying. But what you're doing is wonderful. Never doubt that. I commend all of you. I thank you for the work you're doing.
We commend you, Mumia. We love you so much.
Absolutely.
Love you.
Love you all. Love you
Thank
all.
you for
Thank you
using
for being there.
Securus. Goodbye.
Love you, brother.
We did it! Yay!
Amazing he came on at the right time.
Somehow it always
Always.
manages to do that, coming through in the clutch. So strong.
Thank you to all those who tuned in on YouTube, who asked questions, who showed love in the chat, who show up for Mumia in the streets, who show up for Palestine in the streets, and who will continue to do so. We are so grateful to have shared this space with these powerful student leaders who are going to continue to pave the path for liberation at home and liberation with our international solidarity struggles. We'll continue to keep Palestine on our heart. Thank you all so much.